starting with what were the best films of the decade. And for that, we're going to turn to Chris. Chris, you have your list of the top 10 best movies of the decade.
I do, although I would not call it the best movies. I would call it my favorite movies.
Right.
Thank you.
Movie geeks all know that there is a very big difference here, and this is a really, really hard thing to do, and it was really hard for me to do. I mean, like, you think 10 years, every year we put together a top 10 list, so that's that's hard to do some years.
Mm-hmm.
So some years there's 10, 15 movies. So over 10 years, you're talking about 150 really good movies, and you try and pare that down to 10 movies. It's really, really hard. I mean, it's like cutting the throat of some babies when you're crossing a few movies off that list. You know, I mean, like, very, very hard.
I did time for that, but okay.
Yeah, well, you know, Roman Polanski has done worse. So.
Yeah, no, I know. Now, let me ask before you start, Chris. Is there going to be Jamie? How do you want to do this? After he's done talking, can we chime in, or do you not want that? Okay,
yeah,
no, I'm just checking. You know, I just don't know.
Yeah, I do not have any clips, Chris, because I want to save time in the show, and I figured we'd have enough to say about each selection.
It's fine, and I'm not going to dwell on most of these movies. In fact, I'm more interested in your categories. I mean, a lot has been made of these top 10 lists and stuff, and I think most of the movies speak for themselves. So.
Well, I think whenever we make a list, I mean, the trends are historical more than things that are close to my heart. But with you and Jerry, I mean, these are figures in film and films that are close to your heart, and that's how you choose them. So
right.
that's understood.
The 10 that I was left with are the 10 that literally, if I had to go away to a desert island and take only movies from the last 10 years, I would not be able to leave these movies at home. You know, I mean, I would have to take them. And it is interesting when you make this list and you do finally get it pared down to about 10 or 15, you stare at that list and there's just like seven or eight movies where it's like, that I can't cross that off. Like, I can't cross that off.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I'm glad you've suffered for this list. That sounds great.
No, there really are. There are definitely movies that, you know, are not on this list that are favorites of mine. But, you know, I mean, some stuff had to go. So.
Okay, let's hear number 10.
Number 10, Martin Scorsese's The Aviator. This was my favorite Martin Scorsese movie of the decade. I mean, I love everything he makes. I love The Departed. But I think that The Aviator is just a more well-rounded film. It's a film that I go back to more often and I get a lot more from every time I watch it. Whereas The Departed is always fun. The Aviator has a lot of themes about Americans and wealth and independence and things like that really speak loudly to me. So
an obsession. I mean, it is a mirror to almost Fincher's Zodiac in a way that it deals with its obsession. And I think now the only thing I've really heard against The Aviator, and this movie would be on my top 10 of the decade too, would be. It's not it doesn't feel like a Scorsese movie, but for me it feels completely like one. If you understand his love of movies, it's there.
Exactly. In some ways it feels more, you can feel his love of movies more when he's painting, you know, Cecil DeMille and Katharine Hepburn. And Ava Gardner. I mean, you can tell that he loves these characters. And Howard Hughes, you know, I mean, of all the nasty stuff that's been said about Howard Hughes and all the horrible ways you could depict him in the sort of images we have of him, he doesn't paint him that way. He paints him as a hero. I mean, he's in love with the man.
And it's a real grown-up performance by DiCaprio. I mean, it's a shining performance from him.
The first time I really took a look at him.
Yeah, just the last scene where he's, starts repeating the same thing over and over again. I found that it's just tragically haunting to watch. And I agree. I mean, it's because you got the other depiction of Hughes that we're familiar with is from a James Bond movie of all films, Diamonds Are Forever, Willard White, which is a very comical, performance. So this is like this thing that rectifies that and puts Hughes in the proper perspective, I think.
Yeah.
Ironically, we're going to be talking about Howard Hughes a lot more on Wednesday night because that's the last great passion project of Warren Beatty, is Howard Hughes' story.
Yeah, he tried to get that done for a long time.
A long time. Okay, that's a great choice. And you're number 9.
All right, my number 9, you will probably not agree, Jamie, but it is the Royal Tenenbaums.
Dude, I love you.
It's hard to pick a Wes Anderson movie But this was really, I mean, Rushmore obviously was the last decade, so that can't be chosen. But Royal Tenenbaums really feels like a classic more and more when I watch it. To me, this really, like, a lot of people make comparisons to Harold and Maude and, of course, all Hal Ashby's films. I don't really see that so much anymore, and I never really did. But this movie feels, probably more than all the movies on my list, like a new classic for me, like something that I will never get sick of. I can watch it anytime. It makes me happy just to put the movie in. Every performance is firing on all comedic cylinders. Like, there's so much to be mined from this movie comedically through repeated viewings that I just never get sick of watching it.
I know you like Wes Anderson.
We love Wes Anderson.
What does this movie have over his other works?
Well, this was the first real big ensemble piece. Before this, he had made his first movie, Bottle Rocket. Then there was Rushmore. Now, they were all ensemble pieces, but they were sort of smaller ensemble pieces. There was about 3 to 5 characters most. I mean, this movie's got about 10 characters, and you fall in love with every single one of them. It really feels like this family that you get to know, and you're rooting for everybody, and you just understand. It's the same way that you hate and love the people in your own family so much, like, oh, you fucking idiot, what are you doing, you know? You just, I really get that from this movie.
Totally.
And it's one of the last great Hackman performances, right? I mean,
it should be the retirement film.
Yeah. It would be a lot better than Mooseport, Which isn't making anyone's.
I didn't say it, folks. I didn't say it. Jamie said it. So just remember that when you.
I like him. I love him in Heist. So Heist and Royal Tenenbaums.
Heist is technically before that. So.
Right, but that duo, that's a good way to end the career, I think.
Yeah, that and a bunch of Lowe's commercials.
That's right. That's a good choice. I do not disagree. I think it's.
Wait, can I ask a question, Jamie? Because I don't, I'm not in Florida. Is this something that you have to have sparred about in the past?
No, I don't say his choice is irrelevant. I just don't necessarily get the tone of Wes Anderson myself. It doesn't reach me.
How so? I'm just curious. I just want to know.
In the same sense that the tone of Up in the Air didn't reach me. It seems too mannered for me.
Oh well, that goddamn Oscar host is going to crucify you for that one.
Well, it only took you 13 minutes. That's awesome.
But I didn't name the name.
You didn't name the name.
Dude, I'm playing right into your hand there.
All right, number 8, Chris. What is it?
All right, number 8's the heartbreaker on the list is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh,
man, the movie
three for three.
The movie just like reaches into my chest like the villain in the second Indiana Jones movie and rips out my beating heart every time I watch it. And every time I watch it, I always forget what's going to happen. It's one of those movies that I don't really remember the plot of. Like even now, I don't think I could describe, not the plot, but the storyline to you. It always seems like a surprise every time I watch it. I feel like I've had my mind erased by the end of the movie because I'm so emotionally distraught by this relationship that has, had these ups and downs. And it really, I always liked Jim Carrey. I even like Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber and stupid shit like that. But
not like here, though.
Right. This was the first time when it was like, whoa, this guy's really capable of being a great actor. He hasn't really ever done it since then either.
No, that's the thing. He hasn't. That's the sad thing.
Yeah. But the movie, that's why I will always be interested in anything that Michel Gondry does from this point on, even though also, in his case, I haven't really been blown away by anything he's done since then. It's unforgettable, this movie. I can't.
What surprises me about it, because when you see Kaufman's name attached to anything, you think you know that it'll be clever and original and unique, and kind of a mind warper. What surprised me about this one was its heart.
Oh, it has a lot of heart. It's like the kind of film. This process. It's funny. We all, at certain points in our lives, we wish that there was this place to go to where we have this done. I'm certainly sure Tom Hansen in 500 Days of Summer wishes there were times that he could have had this done for many of his girlfriends before and after summer. But it's a universal film.
I love 500 Days. 500 Days is a great movie, but I think it owes a lot to Eternal Sunshine. The way
it owes a lot to a couple, but definitely this one. You're absolutely right, Chris.
They both, and especially Eternal Sunshine, touches on the way, not the big stuff, but those tiny little details in relationships stick in your mind. The little stuff that lingers in your brain that you can't get out of. Every time you grab that, walk through the supermarket and see that particular type of juice that she used to insist on buying or whatever that little detail is, it just drives you crazy because you can't ever stop relating that to her, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any movie that grasps that concept as well as Eternal Sunshine.
I agree. You're number 7.
Speaking of memory erasing, Memento.
Yeah, exactly.
What an excitement! What an exciting movie this was when it came out. Like, I mean, do you remember the buzz around it? People were talking about it, you know.
Right.
This movie that's told backwards and stuff like that. But again, this is one that you get more and more out of every time you watch it. Every time I watch it, I used to think that, it would be a better movie if they just told it straightforward, but I don't think it would. I mean, it is a gimmick. It's the same way that Blair Witch has a gimmick working for it, or Paranormal Activity has this gimmick working for it. This movie is just a thriller that has this gimmick in it. But the gimmick works so well, and the beauty part about this gimmick is it's never going to be repeated in the way that Blair Witch, you can apply that gimmick to Cloverfield or Friday the 13th movie. This gimmick is so unique to this movie, and the story, again, this story is not much. It's a guy who's looking for the people who killed his wife. But with that one special touch that Chris Nolan adds, which is, the mystique of telling it backwards, which works so well against all odds.
So you don't think it would have worked as well if it was told chronologically?
No, absolutely
not, not at all.
No, I mean, I'm not saying it would not be a good movie. It probably was. It's directed by Chris Nolan. It's an interesting story, although not that interesting. It's got some great performances in it, but I do think it's essential that the movie is told, and it's kind of a misconception to say that it's told backwards. It's told piece by piece backwards. It's sort of overlapping.
Right.
It's not just backwards. It overlaps segments backwards.
Can I...
So that's interesting how the way it'll connect something that happened 20 minutes ago in the film but is really happening 2 seconds from now in the chronological timeline of the movie.
Can I ask you that?
Please.
No, it's not told backwards realistically. It's told the way most people's minds work. We don't remember everything, or we don't piece together everything in this nice, 3-act story structure. We do it very sporadically, very stream of conscious, very broken up. And that's why Memento, I think, works. That's why Irreversible works, for that matter, too. That's how we think. And it happened in this past decade that just ended. We had filmmakers say, wait a second. Well, while it's great to teach this 3-act structure and screenwriting classes, this isn't how most people work in the real world. It's much different. It's very messy. And that's what's beautiful about Memento. Life is messy. It doesn't conform to these methods. So
and yet, but it's still a 3-act structure.
Well, it's still
it just found a different way to do it.
That Robert McKee is going to advocate at the end of the day, though.
Right.
I'm sorry, I should have specified that before I started talking.
No, it is interesting because you take all these innovative films with innovative structures, and essentially, no matter how they jumble them, they still work because they have a beginning, middle, and end. I mean, they have to. You have a movie is an emotional journey, and there has to be a journey represented to go on it. That's a good choice. Number 6 for you, Chris.
Number 6 for me, I can't really defend it, but it's Punch Drunk Love. I don't really know why this movie is stuck with me the way it is, and I realize that even among film goers, a movie like Memento, you walk up to 9 out of 10 people on the street, they're not going to know. They're not going to really remember much about Memento. They might remember it, but wouldn't remember much about it. Nobody remembers Punch Drunk Love, especially Adam Sandler fans. Like they don't really like it. They think it was that one shitty art movie that he did. But this movie's always stuck with me in a way that I can't really let it go. And this is my list, so it's on there.
It has to be on your list. That film is so perfect.
It's a heartbreaker, and to me, I mean, it's not my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film. My favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film is Boogie Nights. You know, but that was in the last decade. We're talking about this decade. And There Will Be Blood is not on my top 10, and that's not because I don't love it. If I had a top 20, There Will Be Blood is one of those movies that I had a hard time, you know, paring down, but eventually it got pushed to the top 20. But I couldn't do that to Punch Drunk Love because it's just stuck with me in a way that I can't let go. And like I said, I can't really defend it. It's just a really sweet, ultra-simple love story.
I think it's a magical thing that you can't articulate. It's kind of what McCabe is for me. Yeah. I mean, you feel it. I mean, describing it would kind of lessen that.
Right.
In a way.
And there's not much to describe with the movie. I mean, it's really it's ultra simplistic, the storytelling. I mean, it's really childlike. There is no real story going on here.
But describing what you respond to in it.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree.
Would kind of wreck the mystique of it, yeah. What were you going to say, Jerry?
Can I defend it? I'll defend it for you, Chris.
Please do.
It's perfect. First of all, it's the best date movie ever made. Secondly, I don't think I've ever seen a more accurate depiction of loneliness put on screen.
Very true.
Also, the scene in the restroom at the restaurant is perfect. And also the scene where he breaks the sister's sliding glass doors. This guy is so angry.
Yeah.
So fucking angry. He just has all this anger bottled up in him. I mean, think about what his job is. He makes plungers. His job is he makes the tool to push the shit down the toilet. He has to deal with so much shit in his life that this tool, this magical tool that will make your toilet work, there's so much beautiful symbolism in this film, but it's that he triumphs. And the sad thing is that people, like you said, the Adam Sandler fan doesn't know about this film. And the sad thing is, because they don't know about this film, it didn't do well. And it didn't do well, and this is where I get this whole argument a couple of months ago. We typecast our actors. They want bedtime stories. They don't want Punch Drunk Love, and we are the lesser for that. We're the losers.
Well, I think you're right, and it's not just the audience that feels that way. I don't think Adam Sandler thinks too fondly of this movie. And you did put it better there than I ever could have. I mean, the movie's about loneliness, and no one listening to this show or not listening to this show has not felt that extreme loneliness and angriness. And this is a story of a guy who is coming to the end of that feeling in his life.
Yeah.
He's not going to feel that anymore. And that's what's so beautiful about it. Is it's one of these movies where everything is okay in the end, but the movie brings me to tears every time I watch it because it's so sweet and so lovely. And nobody could have made that movie but Paul Thomas Anderson.
Right.
And plus, it's a great combo of Sandler with, it's Emily Watson. Is it Emily Watson?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect in this.
Yeah. And Sandler's never been better. So I don't know what else I can say about it, but I love the movie.
Number 5.
Number 5, Spike Jonze adaptation.
Ooh, you're picking all winners.
Talking about Robert McKee again. I think this is actually Charlie Kaufman's best script that he's written. I mean, I really do. And that's, as I looked at this list of top 10, there's no links between any of the movies. There's no 2 movies by any one director. The only link is that there are 2 Charlie Kaufman scripts here. And I do think he's the scriptwriter of the last 10 years, not because of anything thematically that he's doing, just because he's got, some really great work in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
This movie did a lot of things. It reminded me that Nicolas Cage was fucking awesome again. It was exciting. It's one of those movies that literally has everything. It's funny, it's scary at times, it's dramatic, it's got action in it. It literally has everything. All the performances are top-notch. And Spike Jonze and Charlie Kaufman, they're going to go off, and they have gone off and done things independently. But those two are magical together. Like, they really were born to work with each other. So, and maybe this is the last time we'll ever see that. So,
I love movies where you can see the process in the finished product.
Yes.
And this movie embodies that, because he was hired to do something. He was struggling through it. He couldn't do it, and so he made a movie about that struggle, and he expressed a lot of other things within that. So it's an ingenious movie, of course, but it's not ingenious in a way that so many movies that I find ingenious are, that distance you from what's happening. It's very involving. Nicolas Cage you're right. It's a wonder. You're like, man, why can't you spend your career doing this? You've got the goods. It's like you're Marlon Brando, except you're actually accepting jobs. You're wasting your talent by acting in a lot of these films. By saying.
And again, the actor playing twin brothers or playing two characters in one movie was a gimmick that we had at this point. It was original when we first saw it, in the 80s or whatever it was. But by this point, when this movie was made in 2002 or 2003 or whatever it was, that premise, that gimmick was fucked out. Like, we were no longer impressed by an actor playing two characters in the same movie.
Right.
But he impressed me again.
And you're gonna see that with Edward Norton in this Leaves of Grass too. I mean, this.
Think so?
You're gonna see just how unique Nicolas Cage and the script for adaptation is.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exciting.
You're number 4, Chris.
Number 4, the crime movie of the decade. And I can't have a list without this movie. Sexy Beast. Jonathan Glaser's Sexy Beast. I mean, this movie, more than any other movie on the list, more than Royal Tenenbaums, more than Memento, this one gets better with every watching. And by the way, these movies are not ranked of mine. There's no number 10, number 9. They're literally random. I threw them on there in an order that was somewhat random, but this is not. The last one I say will not be the best one, so it should not be said that this is the 4th best movie of the decade. It's just number 4 on my list. They're random.
Okay. What's your favorite part?
Yeah, I just don't know how to quantify the properties of my favorite movies like that. I can't battle these babies against each other. So, but back to Sexy Beast. I used to when the movie first came out, all the buzz was around Don Logan. It was all around Ben Kingsley's character. So when I watched the movie, the rest of it sort of melted away, and I was just sort of blown away by Ben Kingsley's performance. Over the years, the movie itself has become the beauty, and his performance is just the negative side of that beauty. Like, his is the ugly underbelly. And actually, Ben Kingsley says it best on the commentary for the movie. He says, it's about a man who thought he was happy, so God sent him the most unhappy man in the world. And it can't be said better than that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. The crime movie of the decade for me.
I watched it again today before we started the show.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's a favorite of mine, not just because of Don Logan. I mean, you know what? A lot of people always say that Ben Kingsley's playing against type in the film, and while that's very true, Ray Winstone is playing against type, too, because he always plays the heavy and Nil by Mouth, and there's some other films he always played that, like, the tough British, gangster or no remorse, and he's a teddy bear in this movie. Let's be honest. I mean, or compared to what what comes after, he's really a nice guy in this film compared to anything he's ever played before and after. But who's also very good is Ian McShane.
Oh yeah, Teddy.
I mean, that scene where Fox says, "I'm staring at the back of your head," and he says, "Well, why don't you stare at the back of your own
fucking head?"
That's great.
Yes, very quotable movie too. Like movies can be their greatness can be quantified in some ways about how quotable they are.
Yeah.
Real Genius is insanely quotable. Ghostbusters is insanely quotable. Sexy Beast is insanely quotable. So many great lines from this movie. I'm not going to go into them here, but fans of the movie. And Jamie, again, I know this is not one of your, probably wouldn't show up on your 10 best of the decade list. Probably wouldn't show up on a lot of people's, but
it showed up on mine when we did this back in August. But yeah,
really,
I've seen it on a lot of top 10 decade of the list. There's a ferocity and an energy to it that I find really special.
Yeah,
I tend to choose movies that only reduce me to a pool of tears.
Beast reduces me to a pool of tears. Okay,
that's my own sensibility. But I don't argue with the choice. Certainly not. You're number 3, Chris.
Number 3, Jean-Pierre Jeune's Amélie.
Yeah.
Probably the only, in fact it is, I think, the only foreign film on my list. Not to say it's not the only good foreign film of the last 10 years, but just a completely original piece of work. So unexpected. Not only the performance, but just the story, just the journey that she takes, all the imagination that went into this script, all the beautiful cinematography, all the colors. It's a lot like Avatar in a strange way. It's a real experience sitting through this movie. I mean, you can't passively put this on and watch it while you're doing something else. First of all, because it's in another language and you wouldn't understand it if you weren't looking at the screen. But you can't passively sit and watch it either. It's just not a movie. I mean, it's a movie that demands your attention. And again, one that not too nothing too fancy here, nothing too special as far as the story goes. It's a girl who's looking for love, but it's the execution that was so special and unforgettable, in my opinion.
When you remember movies, it's not the story that you remember. It's moments.
Yeah, and it's an overall feeling too.
Can I ask a question? Chris, have you been over my house watching the movies that I've been watching the last 2 months?
Well, Jerry, I think you and I, in a lot of ways, the three of us overlap on a lot of stuff, but I do think that if two of us were closer in this group of three, it's probably you and I as opposed to me and Jamie or you and Jamie.
Yeah, no, because I watched...
Nothing against Jamie. It's nothing against Jamie.
Nothing. No, Jamie has very good taste, but I'm just saying because I watched this, I wanted my mom had never seen this. And because she doesn't get to leave the house that often before I moved back home, and I wanted her to see this, and she fell in love with it. And I'd watched this in December again. I hadn't seen it in a while, and that's true with Eternal Sunshine and everything that you've actually brought up on this list so far. I've actually watched again in the last month. But this and what I think is really special is the soundtrack. I can't get the music out of my mind.
Yes.
I've never been able to.
Yeah. And also, Amelie also gets the award for movie that I've tried to get the most people to watch with the fewest success stories.
Really? I mean, you're the first person I heard about the movie from, Chris.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I borrowed the DVD from you, so I'm one of those people.
Well, you were one of the few who did watch it.
Right.
All right. Number two.
You're number two.
We might stray on our path here, Jerry, but number 2 on my list is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I think it's the singular achievement of the Coen brothers in the last 10 years. I don't think it's necessarily their best film. I definitely love Miller's Crossing. I definitely love The Big Lebowski, Fargo. But of the last 10 years, which were weaker than their first 10 years, arguably, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is the best for me.
More than Man Who Wasn't There.
Yeah, and I love The Man Who Wasn't There.
More than No Country for Old Men?
Yes. Again, those two movies, like There Will Be Blood, I love very much. And I probably love The Man Who Wasn't There more than No Country for Old Men, simply because No Country for Old Men was just a great book. And the book was so close to the movie that, in a strange way, I really don't feel like the Coen brothers did very much there. Like they did a great adaptation, but it wasn't an achievement on their part so much as I feel like it was an achievement on the part of Cormac McCarthy.
Right.
But Man Who Wasn't There, but especially Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, is so unique, and also, in a way, an adaptation. I don't know. The music, of course, the soundtrack was like the biggest soundtrack of the decade.
The movie was their biggest success, I think. Even though it wasn't in the top 10, it stayed around for the longest of all their films, I think.
Yeah, it had extreme legs on it. It's insanely watchable. It's just a really sweet, good-hearted movie. I mean, you're not going to feel yucky after you watch it. You're not going to like go take a Silkwood shower or anything after you watch this movie. You just enjoy the music. This is the first time I realized that George Clooney was fucking hilarious. The look of the movie, the soundtrack, the performances, the story, the humor, everything firing on all cylinders. And
you're right.
Unforgettable. And also appealed to so many different groups. This is a movie that's literally for everyone. Like, there's no group of people that can't watch this movie and get something out of it. Old people, young people, white people, black people, men, women. Everyone likes this movie.
No, it's their biggest. It's actually, I do think, more so, I think, than No Country for Old Men. It is their most popular movie, especially because of the soundtrack. People really reacted favorably to the soundtrack. So
and introduced T-Bone to the movie public.
Yeah.
And he's in the news again this year for Crazy Heart. So.
Yeah. Strangely, I don't like to listen to the soundtrack. It just makes me want to watch the movie. So if I want to listen to the soundtrack, I just watch the movie.
And plus, so many people in the Sparrow Fart town where we live are already listening to the soundtrack in their cars. So, all right, your number one, Chris. I wish I had a drum roll, but here we go.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind though. Actually, I said there is no ranking to this list, but this one probably would be my number. If I had to choose my favorite of the decade, I wouldn't be able to number 1 through 10, but number 1 I would probably be able to say definitely would be the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And it is the trilogy, and I'll tell you why. And I know some people would say that's kind of a cheat because they're 3 separate movies, but for me they're one movie because I never, ever watch them singly. If I'm going to watch if I get a hankering to watch The Lord of the Rings, I start with the first one, and I watch all 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I never watch them unless I've got the day off. Like, you will not find me watching. I mean, it's an 11-hour endeavor for me to watch The Lord of the Rings. I'm either going to watch them all 3, or I'm not going to watch them. I'm going to watch Punch Drunk Love or something like that. So,
right.
This was the trilogy of the decade. It was the sci-fi epic of the decade, maybe. Time will tell. And I think it's the trilogy. I used to think that Star Wars was the greatest trilogy of all time. Untrue. George
Lucas pissed on all that, so.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. And even if he hadn't, I really do think that the Star Wars movies started out good, got great, and then went back to good. Yeah. The Lord of the Rings movies
got better and better.
Better, best. They just, to sit and watch this for 11 hours is such a thrill because it's that 3-act structure we were talking about. But
and without a doubt, yeah. Without a doubt, it's one of the most, or if not the most staggering achievement of the decade. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at that material and the mountain he had to climb, it seems so insurmountable. And the fact that he did it, the fact that New Line bet on it, and now New Line has gone bye-bye. But it was which amazes me. It was a major risk undertaking that movie, and that it paid off was a miracle and a major testament to the talents of Jackson.
Let me ask Chris the question here, though. Do you think it's the greatest cinematic trilogy of all time?
Yeah, there isn't another one that rushes to mind.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm with you.
To be perfectly honest with you, I mean, really, the trilogies, you're really only talking about, sci-fi and action adventure movies. That's the only movies where you really get trilogies.
Or Godfather.
Well, yeah. But again, does anyone really put that one into the conversation when you're talking about trilogies?
No.
You would think, but okay. We're not going to go there right now.
They'd like to pretend it's not a trilogy.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if we're talking about best set of 2, Godfather is in the conversation, ironically. But as trilogies go, no, I don't think there's anything better. I don't think there's going to be for a long time.
No, I don't. I think this is it. This is the be-all, end-all.
That's a great list, and we're running right on time, so we're doing good. Chris's list of the best of the decade. Avatar. The Aviator. It looks like Avatar when you just glance at it. The Aviator, The Royal Tenenbaums, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Memento, Punch Drunk Love, Adaptation, Sexy Beast, Amelie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and The Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's his top 10 of the decade.